Funding for Decibel is provided by Texas Mutual Insurance.
Good evening. I'm Judy Maggio, and this is Decibel.
Testing, mic check.
Well, here's my problem with that.
What are some of the barriers you've come across? Tonight on Decibel, securing your vote. As new concerns arise about election meddling, we'll show you the extra layer of protection now in place at local polls.
So we finally have a system that offers us best of both worlds.
Plus, the powerful role voters under 30 are playing in 2020 and the barriers some of them face.
For the longest time, Texas was seen as not a competitive state. That is changing because as we've seen more youth come into the fray, especially in the 2018 election, we're seeing more competitive areas in Texas and more investment there.
We were looking at the incredible growth in the youth vote from 2014 to 2018. It tripled, but it's still only at about 24%. So we were really looking into what barriers are still in the way for young people being able to turn out to vote.
Exhale to wiggle the fingertips and rain it down.
Then later on Decibel, meet an Austin original with millions of yoga fans all over the world.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Those stories and more tonight. We begin with election security. Voters want a strong sense of safety when they cast their ballot. Travis County is trying to meet those needs with a new state-of-the-art voting system that provides a paper trail. But as Samantha Guzman reports, there are other ways election meddling can happen beyond the ballot box.
Dana DeBeauvoir has served as Travis County Clerk for decades.
A county clerk does a lot of different jobs, but people probably know the job mostly for serving as the elections official. I conduct all the elections for all the jurisdictions in Travis County, and there are approximately 132 cities, schools, and other entities in Travis County.
And for all those years, DeBeauvoir has been focused on getting the safest voting machines.
So we finally have a system that offers us best of both worlds. All of the support that this very large county needs in terms of electronic support for voters, as well as a paper trail.
DeBeauvoir achieved this dream last year. So what's different? Voters are now given a paper ballot to review after voting electronically.
They're going to voter verify to make sure that on the ballot card, everything that's printed there is exactly their choices. It's exactly the way they want it.
This is the latest evolution in a long history of voting technology. Elections in the U.S. are handled at the county level, so counties decide what tech they use for casting ballots. Up until 2000, counties combined a mixture of methods to count votes, including hand-counted paper ballots, punch cards, mechanical lever machines, and direct recording electronic devices, or DREs. But then came the 2000 election.
Right now is moving our earlier declaration of Florida.
And the famous hanging chads on punch card ballots, leaving election results unclear. That's when Congress began to question the reliability of existing technology. So they passed the Help America Vote Act in 2002, which banned the use of punch cards and lever machines in federal elections. This helped a lot of counties, including Travis, transition to the use of DREs.
We had used just hand-scribbled paper, we had used punch card, and we had used optical scan, all of which carry high error rates, and electronic voting was an improvement over that. So Help America Vote Act helped us move to electronic voting.
But the new electronic machines still couldn't give voters complete assurance their votes were safe.
They go into the polling place, they interact with a machine, the machine says, yes, you have voted for George Washington. The voter leaves, and now the machine is free to change what it stored in its internal memory to record instead a vote for Benedict Arnold.
It might seem like a step backward, but paper is actually considered the most reliable voting technology.
What we're trying to do with paper is we're trying to get the machine to commit to an interpretation of the voter's vote in a way that the voter can look at and verify, and then that can't be changed after that verification step.
But there are still other ways to interfere with elections that don't involve changing ballots.
The chances of a voting machine being hacked, a single vote center or polling place within 10,000 entities in the United States is almost impossible. But let's talk about what we should be worried about. Voter registration is absolutely open 24/7 to the public, and it is connected to the internet. I don't hear anybody talking about the liability or the vulnerability of voter registration. I just hear people talking about this utter extreme that's probably never going to happen with voting systems.
It all depends on what the goal of election interference really is.
For an adversary who wants to just cause chaos and cast doubt on the outcome of the election, could interfere with any of a number of things. Delete voter registration rolls, interfere with the businesses that print ballots so that they're not able to deliver ballots on election day, make it so that all the machines on election day in the polling places just refuse to turn on. Anything that creates really long lines that keeps people from being able to vote in a timely way.
Stirring chaos was at the heart of Russian attacks in 2016. The Senate Intelligence Committee report revealed Russia used disinformation to interfere in the presidential election.
The number one problem that we're having with voting right now is bad information. And that's the internet. That's the Facebook and all of the other information that's coming off the internet.
Yet, it's still kind of hard to explain what disinformation is.
Most people don't know. I think it's a term that has become very popular, almost a buzzword, and scholars know what it is, and government officials know what it is, but people don't talk like that. So I would say that, for me, disinformation is essentially information that the intent behind it is to misinform, to mislead.
Russia did this by posting false news reports and using bots to stir up polarizing conversations on social media. One campaign even told people they could text in their vote on election day.
I wish everybody would turn off internet altogether and read instead of relying on the guaranteed bad information you're getting online.
The reality is, though, most people get their news from the internet and social media. And because so many people get their news online, it's hard for them to tell what's credible information.
I was just asking my students just yesterday, so how many of you know what sponsored content is? A lot of hands did not go up because they don't know, and it's advertising.
That's why Poindexter teaches a news literacy class each semester. She says education is one way to fight misinformation.
We also have to help the public to understand, what is news, what's the purpose of news, what are the principles, what's the process of news. So when people are more informed about all of that, they can better judge.
But it's going to take more than one class at one university to prevent election interference.
Media organizations, without question, they have to be a part of this, and the social media, organizations too, because that's where people are getting the information. So it's kind of like, all hands on deck, that we all have to get involved and to do something.
Because Poindexter says there's too much at stake to do nothing.
I think and eventually people will just throw their hands up, and it's like, okay, well, I'm not even going to be a part of it because they don't trust, the system. So, there is a lot at stake here. Everybody has their preference for who they want, to win the election, but more importantly, you want to feel that, okay, well, my person didn't win. Maybe my person didn't win, but at least I feel that it was a fair outcome. And I think that's probably what we really want to know, that it's fair. And so it wasn't fair if there's someone, others that are interfering.
And fair elections are at the heart of our democracy.
While they wield power at the polls, some are facing roadblocks to making their vote count. Joe Rocha has the story of the youth vote.
Young people, their voice does count. And if we know that our voice counts, then our voice will get amplified and become something bigger that we can achieve and that we want for the future.
Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you guys. the youth vote.
Did you say utes?
Yeah, 2 utes.
What is a ute?
Excuse me. The youth vote in Texas is poised to play a big role in the upcoming 2020 election. Austin rock trio the Tiara Girls have placed civic engagement center stage in their performances. Tori Valtierra, the youngest of the three, recently became eligible to vote. She registered on stage during a gig.
So yeah, I will be signing my registration form right here, right now.
And voted for the first time.
You registered to vote?
Civic engagement with these musicians is a family affair, and they often hold council together to discuss politics.
My voter registration card came in the mail, and I came home from school, and my dad put it on my bed so I could see, and it felt like a little present, like oh, I get to vote now.
And a great deal of their interest goes back to their education. The three attended and graduated from the Ann Richards School for Young Women Leaders.
On this particular issue pretty closely aligns with the Democratic Party platform. The AP program for government in particular are pretty straightforward about civic action and civic engagement being an important component of the class. But it's also not just one of the sort of foundational parts of the course at the College Board level, it's an important part of our culture.
Michael Hatch is a 12th grade government teacher.
For youth to try to get engaged, they kind of need to know what are ways in which they can become civically engaged or politically active or civically active. And it's, I think, incumbent upon teachers between 6th grade to 12th grade, kindergarten to 8th grade, regardless of the time period, to encourage students to start thinking about how the things that they're learning in school impact the people around them.
We were looking at the incredible growth in the youth vote from 2014 to 2018. It tripled, but it's still only at about 24%. So we were really looking into what barriers are still in the way for young people being able to turn out to vote.
Maggie Stern with Children's Defense Fund of Texas authored a report that outlines what they say is state voter suppression of youth.
So we looked at 2 kinds of barriers. The first are more passive, so it's things like voter ID requirements and an outdated voter registration system that affect everybody, but are a real big problem for young voters and first-time voters in particular, who might not know all the ins and outs of how to register and what ID they need to show up at the polls. And then more active barriers like polling place closures or shortened early voting periods that tend to happen in communities where there's a lot of young people, like on college campuses, and particularly where there's a lot of young people of color.
Because in Texas, people under 40 are overwhelmingly people of color. So those things are linked together, and they actually can't be separated.
The Texas Civil Rights Project has been in the thick of a push for increased youth voter registration.
So we've also been looking at a little-known law from the 80s that requires Texas high schools to offer voter registration twice a year. And this has been ignored, sadly, for decades. We have done a variety of steps, including pushing the Secretary of State's office to make steps about how you comply with the law clear and sending out notices to principals. We've also created a toolkit, both for educators and for community groups, also to make it as easy as possible.
Charlie Bonner is with Move Texas. They, along with coalition partners like Texas Rising, have been part of a big push to get young people out to the polls.
We also know that voting is a habit. You do it once, you do it twice, then you've created that habit within yourself and you're turning into a lifelong voter. It's why we don't necessarily focus on presidential elections. We're focusing on local elections and primaries and runoffs so we can get those few touches in the first few elections of a young voter's life to create that habit for them.
So the increase that we've seen in the youth electorate is really a game changer in terms of how campaigns look at us. For the longest time, Texas was seen as not a competitive state. That is changing because as we've seen more youth come into the fray, especially in the 2018 election, we're seeing more competitive areas in Texas and more investment there.
And when we start having candidates talking about the issues that matter to young people, we can turn out even more young people because they're seeing the difference that they can make.
Are you registered to vote? You want to get registered? It takes 1 minute.
It's a third of the electorate is under 30 in Texas. You're just gonna not turn out those folks? It's no longer a good investment for those campaigns to not make. And so we're hoping to change that conversation and see campaigns put their money behind young people.
And as for youths, excuse me, youths like Tori Valtierra,
I'm really excited to vote in not only the general election, but the primaries. For a very long time, I've been sitting on the sidelines and just seeing things happen to my community, and I feel very, very prideful in the fact that now I'm eligible and I can go and I can vote, use my voice within the privilege that I hold, which is the democracy I live in.
Tori Battiara isn't the only first-time voter to excite and engage her generation.
Typically, we start off every meeting talking about current events, so what happened.
Girl Scout Kate Hirschfield started a civics club at Westlake High School to earn her Gold Award. We talked to Kate about what motivated her.
I saw a lot of youth engagement, especially over the past few years. And in 2018, with the national walkouts for gun safety, I saw all of this really powerful youth energy, and I was just so inspired. And I wanted to do something in my local community to let that manifest and have youth support each other in this new movement that was happening.
Kate told us empowering young people is an investment in the future of humanity. Empowerment is also a driving force behind a push in workforce development. As part of the PBS commitment in this area, we'll be bringing you monthly stories on the workforce.
All right, take a deep breath for me.
Tonight, meet a nurse who says he's living the dream, even though it wasn't his original dream job. His new career as an ICU nurse is helping to fill a need for more nurses in Texas.
Minority nurses are underrepresented, so we need to retain them in college so that they can graduate and contribute to the workforce.
I'm gonna go ahead and check your vital signs. So the things that we see here in the ICU is a different variety of things, from people's vital signs not being within normal limits, or their labs being off, or if they're having trouble breathing, or if they just come back from surgery and they just need a little extra help to get them over the hump.
Alex Rispris is an ICU nurse. While he considers it a dream job, it wasn't his first career choice.
My dream job when I was little is be an athlete, be a famous baseball player.
The athletic career didn't really pan out. Eventually, Alex did land a job that paid well, but the hours were rough.
So I was working at a concrete block plant. I did that for 13 years, working 6 12-hour days. My little girl was born, and I decided I need something for the long haul. So I looked into college and started pursuing a nursing career.
Now let's talk about crutches. Anyone want to demonstrate crutches? We have students that have never been in the hospital since they were born. So they come from other professions to us.
Joyce Tolafari is a nursing professor at Austin Community College. She sees nurses starting their careers from many different points in life. These new nurses are filling a big gap because Texas is facing a massive nursing shortage.
So short that they are projecting that in 2030 we're going to have about 60,000 less nurses in Texas. There are different factors that are causing shortage of nurses. There's less faculty, so schools are turning away students or potential nurses.
Alex was not turned away, but he still had to balance work, school, and being a parent.
You had to stay focused on school and study hard, and at sometimes you felt like you're neglecting your child. What I was told by others is, don't feel like that because your child sees what you're doing.
Visibility is huge, and it factors into the other big nursing shortage issue in Texas. People of color are grossly underrepresented in the medical field. A 2008 survey found that while roughly 60% of the country identifies as non-Hispanic white, more than 80% of registered nurses were non-Hispanic white. That means there is a big gap between the demographics of the country and the nurses that are helping them.
So, like in Texas, African American nurses are just 13% of the workforce, and Hispanics are about 7%.
This is a problem. Tolafari says the workforce needs culturally competent nurses. That is, nurses from different backgrounds who can connect with and advocate for their patients.
So there are lots of things that will go right. The patient will feel safe, and feel comfortable talking or speaking the same language with the practitioner, and enhance trust and build good, quick rapport with each other.
Not having that trust and understanding can add to the health disparities many communities of color already face. Medical experts agree that having a diverse workforce is one of the ways to make sure there are better health outcomes for everyone.
Hey, how you doing? Currently, I'm working on my Bachelor's of Science in Nursing.
Alex is well on his way to advancing his medical career, and while it might not be the career path he envisioned, he is living the dream, and he's helping his patients keep living their lives.
My life has changed. I spend more time with my family. I go see my parents more often. I work 3 days a week. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck anymore.
Finally tonight, Austin's own YouTube superstar, Adrienne Mishler, is welcomed into the homes of 6 million followers with her Yoga with Adrienne series. Adrienne recently welcomed the Decibel team into her home. She not only showed us the magic of making yogi tea, but invited me to the mat to practice my poses.
The more willing and honest and authentic I can show up, it's kind of a sign of respect, of like, I'm gonna let you really see me for who I am. And then you're showing up in a different way than you would otherwise when somebody kind of says, let's be honest, or like, let's be true to ourselves here. So for me, it's very comforting.
Comforting doesn't just describe making yogi tea with Adrienne Mishler. It's the essence of spending time with her.
I like to leave it on the stove for a fair amount of time so that my whole house starts to smell like the olden days, or just smell really good. Yeah.
Adrienne's Austin roots run deep.
I always feel really blessed and lucky to have grown up here in Austin for so many reasons, but particularly in a creative environment. I think it has had a fair influence on how I turned out and what I have ended up doing with my life.
The original life plan was acting, but after returning home from training with a prestigious theater group in New York, she tried yoga as a way to build strength.
I remember that's when I was like, whoa, what is this, and how can I make sure this stays, with me, or I stay with it? I don't know if I found it or it found me, but who cares, because here we are, and it probably saved my life.
That blossoming love of yoga led her to teaching.
Hello, and welcome to Yoga with Adrienne. I'm Adrienne, and this is our first video ever.
Then in 2012, she co-founded Yoga with Adrienne with a close friend and director.
I always really loved acting and performing. I think that being a performer has influenced Yoga with Adrienne in more ways than I'd like to admit. Mm-hmm. But I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I knew I wanted to be a performer. I never in a million years thought I would be a yoga teacher, and of course never in a million years thought I would be in the circumstances that we are in now, sharing in the way that we share with people all over the world.
More than 6 million people across the globe now follow Yoga with Adrienne on YouTube. I'm one of them.
And then exhale to wiggle the fingertips and rain it down.
So it was a special treat to hit the mat for a one-on-one class with her. Well, not exactly one-on-one.
This is the moment everybody's been waiting for. Benji has become kind of an important tool in me doing whatever it is I'm doing, sharing, creating exchange. It's like having the dog there does send a message too, like, it's cool, we're not really trying to dress this up. Just do what you can, get on the ground, stretch, work out, cry, pray, whatever you need, and all will be as it should be.
I love that movie. Have you ever gone to the... Adrienne's mantra is find what feels good. That accessibility and authenticity is likely why Yoga with Adrienne has attracted such a large, loyal following.
What do you want people to come away with when they watch you on YouTube? And what at the end of the practice, what is your wish for them?
I think my ultimate wish is for everyone to feel like a little bit of what I felt when I fell in love with the practice. Just this feeling of both being closer to yourself and also connecting to something bigger, and what that can do for us and our confidence and our self-worth and the way we move throughout our everyday. I feel like even if just a little tiny bit of that is tapped into on the mat, that would be a dream. So,
thank you.
Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you, Benji.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste to all of you. We hope you've enjoyed tonight's episode of Decibel. As always, we welcome your comments and ideas and invite you to follow us on social media. Look for more of our stories on the Decibel ATX website. Thanks for sharing part of your evening with us.
Funding for Decibel is provided by Texas Mutual Insurance.